The silent guardian. The air on Nexus 7 always tasted of recycled dreams and diplomatic lies. First Lieutenant Elijah Caney adjusted his uniform collar, feeling the weight of the station's artificial gravity pulling at his shoulders as much as the weight of his new assignment pressed upon his conscience. "Your duties are simple, Lieutenant." Station Commander Vera Walsh's voice was clipped, efficient. "The Keldari emissary is a valuable diplomatic asset. You will ensure her safety. During negotiations, nothing more." Elijah stood at perfect attention. "Understood, Commander. I cannot stress enough the importance of protocol with the Keldari." Walsh continued, sliding a security badge across her desk. "No direct communication, no sustained eye contact, no questions about her abilities. The Dominion is very protective of their empathic specialists. This summit is already balanced on a knife's edge." "Yes, Commander, strictly professional distance." Walsh's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just bureaucratic nonsense, Caney. Keldari empaths form neural connections through prolonged interaction. It's why they're so valuable as negotiators, and why they're kept isolated. The last guard who disregarded protocols ended up in psychiatric rehabilitation." Elijah swallowed. He'd heard rumors about the Keldari, their uncanny ability to sense emotions, to forge connections that transcended normal communication. Some claimed they could even manipulate feelings, though the Dominion vehemently denied such capabilities. "I won't disappoint you, Commander. See that you don't. Escort duties begin at 0600 tomorrow. Dismissed." The corridors of the diplomatic wing were eerily quiet as Elijah made his evening security sweep. Most negotiators had retired to their quarters, preparing for tomorrow's tense discussions over resource rights in the Vega sector. Nexus 7 hung in neutral space. A metallic olive branch extended between two powers, always one misunderstanding away from war. He paused outside the Keldari delegation's quarters, checking his security terminal. All systems normal. 3 life signs. 2 guards outside, 1 inside. The emissary. As he turned to continue his patrol, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Elijah froze. Standing in the doorway was a figure that defied every mental image he'd constructed. The Keldari emissary was humanoid but undeniably alien, her skin a deep azure with subtle patterns that seemed to shift with her breathing. Her eyes were large, luminous silver pools without pupils, and her hair fell in thick white tendrils that appeared to float slightly, as if underwater. Most striking was her expression, not the cold, calculating look of a diplomatic tool, but something profoundly sad and curious. Protocol dictated he should immediately avert his eyes and continue walking. Instead, Elijah found himself frozen, caught in that silver gaze. "You're afraid," she said, her voice melodic with an undercurrent that resonated somewhere behind his sternum. "Not of me. For me." The words broke the spell. Elijah stepped back, eyes dropping to the floor. "Forgive the intrusion, Emissary Vosh. I was completing security checks." "Taylara." He risked glancing up. "My name is Taylara," she said, "though they prefer you call me the asset or the emissary." A bitter smile curved her blue-tinted lips. "I should continue my patrol," Elijah said stiffly, protocol screaming in his mind. Taylara took a step forward, out of her doorway. She wore formal Keldari attire, a flowing silver garment that seemed woven from liquid metal, emphasizing her tall, graceful form. "You're different from the others," she said quietly. "They look through me. You see me." Before Elijah could respond, a door opened further down the corridor. Taylara immediately retreated into her quarters, the door sealing shut as if their exchange had never occurred. That night, sleep eluded Elijah. He stared at the ceiling of his quarters, replaying those few seconds of prohibited interaction. 1 conversation, barely that, and already he felt something unusual, like a whisper just beyond hearing range. Tomorrow he would begin his official duties as her guardian. Protocol would be followed, distance would be maintained. But as Elijah finally drifted towards sleep, Taylara's silver eyes followed him into dreams, and somewhere in his mind, he felt something gentle and alien brush against his consciousness, like fingers testing water's surface. Dangerous frequencies. 3 weeks of silent escort duty had taught Elijah more about Taylora than any conversation could. He noticed how she subtly tensed whenever Dominion Overseer Joran entered a room, the slight tremor in her hands during particularly heated negotiations, and the way her silver eyes occasionally darted to him when she thought no one was watching. Today's session had been particularly grueling. The Terran delegation, led by the shrewd Ambassador Hiroki, had pushed back against Keldari mining claims in the Vega sector. Tensions had risen until Taylora had stepped forward, her presence somehow calming the room as she offered a compromise that left both sides grudgingly satisfied. Now, as Elijah stood guard outside the observation deck during the delegates' recess, he couldn't help but wonder how she did it. This ability to sense and soothe emotions that made her kind so valuable. They call it frequency matching. Elijah startled at the voice. Taylora stood in the doorway of the observation deck, those silver eyes fixed on him. "Emissary Vosh," he said stiffly, "you shouldn't be alone without your Dominion escorts." "They believe I'm meditating in my quarters," she said, stepping closer. "I've become quite skilled at misdirection, Lieutenant Kane." His name on her lips sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. "I should report this. But you won't." It wasn't a question. "Because you're curious about what I can do, about why they fear contact between us so much." The corridor was empty. The security cameras in this section mysteriously offline, a fact Elijah had noted but not reported when he'd begun his shift. A dangerous oversight. 5 minutes, he said, against every regulation. Then you return to your quarters. Taylora's expression brightened as she moved to the viewport. Beyond the reinforced glass, the binary stars of the Nexus system painted space in shades of amber and blue. "My people don't just sense emotions, Lieutenant. We harmonize with them." Her voice was soft, musical. Every sentient being broadcasts a unique emotional frequency. We can attune ourselves to those frequencies, understand them, even influence them slightly, like adjusting the resonance of an instrument. "That's why you're valuable as negotiators," Elijah said, maintaining his position by the door but unable to stop his curiosity. "You can sense when someone is lying or hostile." "A crude application of our abilities, yes." Taylora's eyes reflected the starlight. "But the Dominion only values tools, not understanding. They keep us isolated because prolonged contact with a single individual creates a deeper attunement, a bond that can't be easily severed." Elijah's heart quickened. "Like what happened to my predecessor." Her expression darkened. "Officer Merrick, they told you he required psychiatric rehabilitation?" Another lie. "He showed me kindness, and we began to form a connection. The Dominion transferred him immediately. He's now working a mining outpost in the Kairos belt, as far from diplomatic circles as possible." The revelation sent ice through Elijah's veins. "Why are you telling me this? You're putting both of us at risk." "Because something is wrong with these negotiations." Taylora stepped closer, her scent like rain on warm stone. "I sense deception beneath the surface emotions, something neither the Terran Alliance nor the Dominion is acknowledging openly. And because..." She hesitated. "Because what?" Elijah asked, aware he was already far beyond protocol. "Your emotional frequency is extraordinary, clear, strong, honest. I've never encountered anything like it." Her hand lifted, hovering inches from his chest. "May I show you?" Every instinct screamed warning, but Elijah found himself nodding. Her fingertips touched his uniform over his heart. Immediately, warmth spread through him, followed by a cascade of sensations. Not thoughts or images, but pure emotions that weren't entirely his own. Curiosity, loneliness, hope, fear. Beneath them all ran a current of something deeper, something that made his breath catch. "This is how my people truly communicate," Taylora whispered, her silver eyes wide. "This connection is what the Dominion fears, because it cannot be controlled or exploited." Footsteps echoed from around the corner. Taylora withdrew her hand, the connection breaking like a severed string, leaving Elijah disoriented and strangely bereft. "Tomorrow night," Same time, she whispered, slipping past him toward an access corridor. There's more you need to know. By the time Overseer Joran rounded the corner with his security detail, Elijah had composed himself, standing at attention beside the observation deck doors. But inside, everything had changed. The echo of that brief connection lingered, a ghost of warmth pulsing in time with his heartbeat. As he watched Joran's cold eyes sweep the corridor suspiciously, Elijah realized he had crossed an invisible boundary. Whatever came next, there would be no returning to the safety of ignorance. And despite everything he knew about duty and protocol, he found himself counting the hours until tomorrow night. The bonding storm. We've detected unusual neural activity in your prefrontal cortex, Lieutenant. Medical Officer Patel studied her scanner with narrowed eyes. Have you experienced headaches, unusual dreams, or emotional fluctuations recently? Elijah maintained a neutral expression despite the alarm bells ringing in his mind. Nothing significant, Doctor. Perhaps stress from the heightened security protocols. 3 clandestine meetings with Telara over the past week had left traces he hadn't anticipated. Each encounter deepened their connection, brief touches that opened windows between their minds, revealing fragments of memories, emotions that weren't his own lingering hours afterward. Patel didn't look convinced. Your serotonin and oxytocin levels are elevated as well, almost like... She frowned at the readings before shutting off her scanner. I'm recommending you take a stimulant regulator. These diplomatic missions can disrupt sleep cycles. Elijah accepted the small packet of pills with no intention of taking them. Thank you, Doctor. As he left the medical bay, his communicator chimed. Commander Walsh's voice came through, tense and clipped. All security. Personnel report to Briefing Room 6 immediately. 20 minutes later, Elijah stood with the other officers as Walsh paced before them. Intelligence suggests a possible sabotage attempt during tomorrow's final negotiations, she announced. The Keldari delegation has received threats from extremist factions opposed to any compromise over Vega sector resources. Images appeared on the briefing room screen. Suspected operatives, potential entry points, security vulnerabilities. Lieutenant Caney, Walsh turned to him. Given your familiarity with the emissary's schedule, you'll coordinate her security detail during the summit. The Dominion has reluctantly agreed to integrated protection. Understood, Commander. Remember your protocols, Walsh added pointedly. The Keldari have expressed concerns about potential unauthorized interactions with their emissary. Elijah's blood ran cold. Did they suspect? Had Telara been questioned? He maintained his composure through the remainder of the briefing, but anxiety gnawed at him. Later that evening, as he reviewed security plans in his quarters, his door chimed. Expecting another officer, he was stunned to find Telara standing there, her Dominion escorts nowhere in sight. You can't be here, he whispered urgently, pulling her inside before anyone could see. How did you? They're occupied with preparation for tomorrow. I needed to warn you. Her silver eyes were wide with fear, the patterns on her azure skin pulsing rapidly. Joran knows something has changed. He's been watching me, questioning my readings during negotiations. They suspect us? Not precisely, but they know I'm more resistant to their control. Elijah, there's something I haven't told you about tomorrow's summit. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. The compromise I'm supposed to propose, it's designed to fail. The Dominion wants these negotiations to collapse. Why? What do they gain from conflict? I don't know yet, but I've sensed Joran communicating secretly with someone in the Terran delegation. There's a deeper game. The station's alarm suddenly blared, red emergency lights bathing the room. Warning. Environmental systems compromised in sectors 3 through 7. All personnel initiate evacuation protocols. Elijah's communicator exploded with activity. Frantic reports of multiple breaches, life support failures cascading through the diplomatic wing. It's happening now, Telara whispered, horror in her voice. They're forcing an emergency evacuation to disrupt the talks. "We need to get you to your delegation's ship," Elijah said, grabbing his sidearm and emergency kit. As they rushed into the corridor, chaos engulfed them. Diplomats and staff ran toward evacuation points while security teams moved in the opposite direction. Through the pandemonium, Elijah spotted Overseer Joran watching them, his eyes cold with calculation before he disappeared into the crowd. They fought their way through 2 sectors before a thunderous explosion rocked the station. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, separating them from both the Terran and Keldari evacuation points. "We're cut off," Elijah realized, checking the station schematic on his communicator. "Atmospheric pressure dropping. We have minutes before this section depressurizes." "The maintenance pods," Tylara suggested, pointing to a service corridor. "They have independent life support." They reached the tiny pod, barely large enough for 2, as the main lights failed completely. Elijah sealed them inside just as a terrible groaning sound indicated the corridor behind them had been exposed to vacuum. Inside the cramped space, emergency lights cast Tylara's features in stark relief. Their ragged breathing mingled in the silence after the chaos. "They'll search for us once the crisis is contained," Elijah said, trying to activate the pod's distress beacon. "But communications are down. We could be here for hours." Tylara's eyes met his. "We don't have hours. Joran will find us first. He'll never allow me to reveal what I know." Her hand reached for his, skin cool against his palm. "There's only one way I can protect this information. And you." "The bond," Elijah whispered, understanding. "The connection they fear." She nodded. "A complete bonding would allow me to share everything I know, everything I've sensed. But Elijah, it cannot be undone. Our frequencies will permanently attune. My people call it the soul echo." The pod creaked around them as the station continued to break apart. Time was running out. "What happens to us after?" he asked. "We will carry parts of each other always. Your thoughts will never be entirely yours again, nor mine, entirely mine." Her silver eyes shimmered with emotion. "It is not a decision to make in desperation." Elijah thought of duty, protocols, oaths sworn. Then he thought of the deception Tylara had uncovered, the lives at stake beyond their own. "Do it," he said, taking both her hands in his. As her consciousness flowed into his, the barriers between them dissolving, Elijah understood why such bonds were feared. In that moment of complete vulnerability, no secrets could survive, no deceptions remain hidden. And in the storm of their merging minds, the truth about the Vega negotiations and the conspiracy behind them became devastatingly clear. Fractured loyalties. "Lieutenant Caney, you stand accused of violating diplomatic protocols, unauthorized engagement with a restricted foreign asset, and dereliction of duty during a security crisis." Admiral Santiago's voice echoed through the hearing chamber aboard the Terran flagship Indomitable. "How do you plead?" 3 days had passed since Elijah and Tylara were rescued from the maintenance pod. 3 days of separate interrogations, medical examinations, and isolation. The bond between them remained, a constant awareness of her presence somewhere aboard this same vessel, her emotions flowing beneath his own like an underground river. "Not guilty, Admiral," Elijah responded, standing rigidly at attention despite his exhaustion. "The evacuation protocols were compromised. I acted to secure a high-value diplomatic asset." "For 12 hours? In a sealed pod with no distress signal activated?" Captain Reeves, his former direct superior, looked disgusted. "Medical scans show profound neurochemical alterations consistent with Keldari empathic bonding. You allowed yourself to be compromised, Lieutenant." Elijah felt a surge of fear that wasn't his own. Tylara, responding to his situation. He carefully controlled his breathing, focusing on projecting calm through their connection. "The evidence suggests otherwise," a new voice interjected. Defense Minister Wexler entered the chamber, her stern presence causing the officers to straighten. "Lieutenant Caney, you've made serious allegations regarding both Terran and Keldari officials. Conspiracy, sabotage. These require investigation." "Minister, with respect," Admiral Santiago began. The Nexus 7 station was destroyed with 37 casualties. Wexler cut him off. If Lieutenant Caney's information proves accurate, we're looking at treason at the highest levels. Through the bond, Elijah sensed Tylara's situation changing simultaneously. The pressure of Dominion interrogators, their attempts to chemically suppress her abilities, her resistance strengthened by their connection. The Vega sector contains more than dilithium deposits, Elijah stated firmly, reciting the information revealed during their bonding. Preliminary scans detected quantum anomalies consistent with naturally occurring wormhole formations. Both governments have known this for months. Certain factions want exclusive control rather than the shared access that was being negotiated. The chamber fell silent as Wexler approached him directly. You realize what you're suggesting? That elements within both our governments orchestrated this disaster to prevent a peaceful resolution? The evidence is in Overseer Duran's private communications and in encrypted files on Ambassador Hiroki's personal server, Elijah replied. Their conspiracy goes beyond Vega. They've been collaborating for years. Through the bond, he felt Tylara's triumph. She had broken through her restraints, was somehow projecting the same revelations to her Keldari interrogators. Their synchronized testimony, occurring simultaneously on different ships, could not be dismissed as coincidence. Lieutenant, Wexler said quietly, if what you're claiming is true, you and the Keldari emissary are in grave danger. The bond between you, can it be severed? No, Elijah answered truthfully. And they'll never stop hunting us because of what we know. He straightened his shoulders. But we've already transmitted the evidence to multiple secure channels. The truth can't be contained now. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Wexler's communicator chimed urgently. Minister, a panicked voice reported. The Keldari emissary has escaped custody. She's hijacked a diplomatic shuttle and breached our security perimeter. Elijah couldn't suppress a smile as Tylara's fierce determination flowed through him. They had planned this moment during their bonding. If separated, she would escape first, using her abilities to confuse and misdirect. He would follow when possible. She's coming for you, isn't she? Wexler realized, studying his face. You can feel her right now. Minister, Admiral Santiago interrupted. We should secure the prisoner immediately. But Wexler was still watching Elijah, something like reluctant understanding in her eyes. The truth about Vega could prevent a war, Lieutenant. If your evidence is genuine, I'll ensure protection for both of you. Through the bond came Tylara's warning, a vision of Duran and his agents already aboard the Indomitable, moving to silence them permanently. There was no time left. I'm afraid I can't stay for the rest of this hearing, Elijah said calmly, as the ship shuddered from what felt like a minor impact. The lights flickered momentarily. Wexler's eyes widened in comprehension, just as the emergency bulkheads began to seal throughout the ship. Tylara's doing, creating the distraction they needed. Choose wisely, Minister, Elijah said as chaos erupted around them. War or truth, the evidence is in your system now. Then he was moving, following the silent guidance of the bond, running toward his uncertain future, with the one being in the galaxy who now shared his soul. Beyond Star's judgment. The Centauri outpost drifted at the edge of chartered space, a haven for those seeking to disappear from official records. Elijah stood at the viewport of their small quarters, watching distant ships arrive and depart against the backdrop of swirling nebula clouds. 6 months had passed since their escape, 6 months of constantly moving, staying ahead of both Terran and Keldari hunters. They're here, Tylara said quietly, joining him at the window. Her silver eyes reflected the nebula's glow as she placed a data crystal on the ledge between them. Minister Wexler's representative arrived on the morning transport. Elijah picked up the crystal, turning it over in his fingers. And you trust this contact? As much as we can trust anyone, she smiled faintly. I sensed no deception, only determination and fear. Their bond had deepened during their months in exile, evolving beyond the initial connection. They didn't simply sense each other's emotions now. They functioned almost as a single consciousness across two bodies. their strengths complementing each other's weaknesses. While her empathic abilities had always been extraordinary, the bond had awakened latent potential in Elijah too. Flashes of intuition, heightened perception, a developing sensitivity to the emotional states of others. The summit begins in 3 days, he said, pocketing the crystal. If Wexler has truly secured us safe passage, we'll finally have our chance to present the evidence publicly. The revelation of the Vega wormhole had rippled through both governments. Accusations flew, alliances fractured, and the conspiracy they'd uncovered had begun to unravel. But without their direct testimony, without the full weight of what they'd discovered during their bonding, war between the Terran Alliance and Keldari Dominion remained a looming threat. "There's something else," Talara said, a familiar hesitation in her voice that Elijah recognized both through the bond and from months of learning her every expression. "Rumors among the Keldari expatriates here. My people have begun questioning the Dominion's control. Some have attempted bonding with willing partners despite the prohibitions. A revolution?" Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Perhaps, or an evolution." She took his hand, the contact intensifying their connection. Through it flowed images of other Keldari, other bonds forming, each unique, each powerful in its own way. What we share was never meant to be feared or controlled. My ancestors formed bonds freely, creating networks of understanding that transcended individual consciousness. Until the Dominion realized how valuable controlled empaths could be in politics and trade, Elijah finished the thought. Yes, they isolated us, taught us to fear connection. Her fingers tightened around his. But we've shown another way is possible. A gentle chime interrupted them. The outpost's security alert, warning of approaching Dominion vessels. Not unexpected, but earlier than they'd planned for. "We need to move," Elijah said, already gathering their essential belongings. Years of military training had made him efficient at rapid departures. Back entrance, then to Docking Bay 7. "Our contact will be waiting." They moved through the outpost's twisting corridors, avoiding security cameras, their movements synchronized without need for verbal communication. The bond allowed them to function as a perfect team. Talara sensing approaching threats before they materialized, Elijah navigating the labyrinthine structure with unerring precision. They were halfway to the docking bay when they felt it simultaneously. A familiar presence, cold and calculating. "Joran," Talara whispered, stopping abruptly. Around the next corner, the Dominion overseer waited with 4 armed guards. Somehow he had anticipated their escape route. Elijah drew his weapon, but Talara placed a restraining hand on his arm. "No, there's another way." Through their bond flowed her plan, risky, unprecedented, but possibly their only option. Elijah nodded once, trusting her completely. As they rounded the corner together, Joran's thin lips curved into a triumphant smile. "Asset Vosh, Lieutenant Caney, your unauthorized experiment in bonding ends today." "You're right, Overseer," Talara replied calmly. "It does end today, but not as you imagine." Before Joran could respond, she stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "You've never truly understood what we Keldari are capable of. You've used us, isolated us, but never bothered to learn what a fully realized bond can achieve." "Restrain them," Joran ordered his guards. But they hesitated as Talara began to radiate a subtle glow, the patterns on her skin brightening. Through their bond, Elijah felt her drawing on their combined strength, channeling the full potential of their connection. He moved to stand beside her, adding his energy to hers. "What all of you fear isn't the bond itself," Talara continued, her voice resonating strangely in the corridor. "It's the truth such connections reveal, the understanding they make possible." She extended her hands toward Joran and his guards. "Let me show you." What happened next defied explanation in any language either civilization possessed. The bond between Elijah and Talara expanded outward like ripples in still water, touching first the guards, then Joran himself. Not a full bonding, nothing so permanent, but a momentary window into their shared consciousness, a glimpse of complete understanding. For one breathtaking moment, every mind in that corridor was connected, every fear, hope, and hidden truth laid bare. The guards saw the conspiracy their leaders had hidden. Joran faced the consequences of his actions. The lives lost at Nexus 7, the war he had helped engineer for power and profit. When it ended, seconds or eternities later, the weapons had lowered. Joran stood trembling, his carefully constructed worldview shattered by what he had experienced. What have you done to us? He whispered. Given you a choice, Elijah answered. The same choice every sentient being deserves, to see truth and decide what to do with it. One of the guards stepped forward, his expression transformed. The summit. We'll escort you there. Both delegations need to experience what we just felt. Joran said nothing, his eyes hollow with the weight of revelation. 3 days later, as representatives from both civilizations gathered to determine the fate of the Vega sector, Elijah and Telara stood before them. No longer fugitives, but witnesses, to a truth too powerful to deny. What we offer isn't just evidence of conspiracy, Telara told the assembled delegates, her hand firmly clasped in Elijah's. It's proof that connection between our kinds creates something greater than either, alone. The wormhole in Vega sector doesn't belong to either of our civilizations, Elijah continued, just as understanding doesn't belong to any single mind. What Telara and I share isn't a danger to be feared or a weapon to be controlled. It's a template for what's possible between all our peoples. As they stood together before the summit, their bond resonating with purpose and hope, the old boundaries between duty and love, between species and civilizations, seemed as insignificant as the artificial borders drawn on star charts. The path ahead remained uncertain. Changing hearts and minds across two civilizations would take more than one moment of truth. But as Telara's consciousness flowed through his, warm and resolute, Elijah knew they had already won the most important victory. They had chosen to see each other when everyone else had warned them to look away. And in that choice, they had glimpsed a future where no love would need to fear the judgment of stars.